This audio presentation of the Book of the Dead by Samael on Weor is brought to you by audioenlightenment.com. Copyright 2013, all rights reserved. Chapter 1. Death. During the course of existence, different types of energies flow through the human organism. Each type of energy has its own system of action. Each type of energy manifests itself in its own time. The motor and muscular force manifests itself 4.5 months after conception. This is related to the birth of the respiratory and pulmonary function. At 10.5 months, growth with all its marvelous metabolism and conjunction tissues. When the child is between 2 and 3 years old, the fontanelle of the newly born closes, and the cerebrospinal system is completely formed. The human personality is formed during the first 7 years, and at 14 years, personal energy appears. And flowing domineeringly through the sympathetic nervous system, sex appears at 35 years in its transcendental form of creative emotion. It is upon reaching this age that we can make what is called soul. Normal man does not have a soul, or rather, he still is not a man. He doesn't even have a soul. The intellectual animal falsely named man is a machine controlled by the legion of the ego. This is pluralized. I must read a book, says the intellectual function. I am going to a football match, says the motor function. I am hungry. I shall not go anywhere, states the digestion. I prefer to find a woman, says the ego, of passion, etc. All these egos argue among themselves. The ego that today swears faithfulness to Gnosis is replaced by another that hates Gnosis. The ego that today adores a woman is later replaced by another that hates her. Only by making soul do we establish a permanent principle of consciousness within ourselves. He who has soul lives consciously after death. The soul may be created with the accumulation of the finest energies the organism produces, and the crystallization through supreme efforts, to make one self-conscious in a total and a definitive way. Unfortunately, the intellectual animal called man wastes these energies stupidly on cravings, angers, fears, hate, envy, passion, jealousy, etc. It is urgent that we create conscious will. It is indispensable that we subject all of our thoughts and acts to the inner judgment. Only in this way can we know ourselves in depth in order to create soul. The ray of death. The ray of death reduces so-called man to a simple molecular quintessence, in the same way that a ton of flowers may be reduced to a single drop of essential perfume. Because the energy of death is so strong, it destroys the human organism totally. It is a current of such high voltage that it inevitably destroys the organism when it travels through it. As a flash of lightning can tear a tree apart, so the ray of death reduces the human body to ashes. It is the only type of energy that the body cannot resist. This ray connects death with conception. The two extremes meet. When the essence is detached from the old body on the terrible impact on the ray of death, a tremendous electrical tension is produced on the keynote. The axiomatic result of which is a movement and combination of the determining genes of the future physical body. This is how the fine constituents of a fertilized egg are arranged in the corresponding order, having an electrical tension and the keynote of death for a basis. What continues? Two things go to the grave. The first is the physical body, and the second is the human personality. As we have already said, the latter is formed during the first 7 years of infancy and is strengthened with experience. Sometimes the personality wanders through the cemetery or leaves its grave when the mourners visit and bring flowers. But the personality soon disintegrates. The personality is energetic and atomic. The personality is perishable. There is no future for the personality of a dead person. It is mortal. The personality is not reincarnated. The personality is a child of its time and dies in its time. What continues is the essence, that is to say, the ghost of the dead person. Within the ghost, the reincarnate ego, the self is found. This is a legion of devils which continues. It is a mistake to divide ourselves between two eggs, one of superior sort and the other inferior. The ego is a legion of devils, which normally develops within us, that is all. A lot is said in occultist literature about a superego, about a divine ego, but in fact the so-called superior ego is not an ego. The divine being transcends an egoism. That which does not have a profane name is the being, the inner. The essence is molecular. The essence, the ghost of the dead person, normally lives in the molecular world. On dying we leave the cellular world and enter the molecular world. In the molecular world we use a molecular body. The Tibetan Book of the Dead says the following: O noble by birth, your present body, being a body of desire, is not a body of gross material. So now you have the power to pass through any mass of rocks, hills, boulders, earth, houses, and Mount Meru itself, without meeting any obstacle. You now have to possess the power of miraculous actions, which is not the fruit of any samadhi, but the power which comes to you naturally. You can instantaneously be any place you want. You have the power to get there in time. It takes a man to open and shut his hand. Do not desire the various powers of illusion or of changing form. Do not desire them. The vital body. In the human organism there is a thermoelectrical magnetic body. This is the vital body. This body is the seat of organic life. No organism could live without the vital body. Each atom of the vital body enters into each atom of the physical body to make it vibrate intensely. All chemical, physiological, and biological phenomena, all phenomena of perception, all metabolic processes, all action of calories, etc., have their basis in the vital body. In fact, this body is a superior action of the physical body, the tetra-dimensional body. In the last instant of life, this body escapes from the physical organism. This vital body does not enter the grave. The vital body floats near the grave and disintegrates slowly as the corpse disintegrates. Only the corpse and the personality of the dead man go to the grave. The vital body has more reality than the physical body. We know very well that the physical body changes totally every 7 years, and not a single old atom remains in the body. But the vital body does not change. Contained in this body are all the atoms of childhood, adolescence, youth, maturity, old age, and decrepitude. The physical body belongs to the world of 3 dimensions. The vital body is the body of the 4th dimension. The 5th dimension. The ghosts of the dead live in the 5th dimension. This is eternity. Length, width, and depth are the 3 dimensions of the cellular world. Time is the 4th dimension, eternity the 5th dimension, and that which is beyond eternity and time corresponds to the 6th dimension. In fact, liberation begins in the 6th dimension, the world of the divine spirit. It is the electronic world of the 6th dimension. All those who die enter the 5th dimension. Eternity opens to devour the dead and then expels them from its bosom to return them to the world of time and physical form. The dead are expelled from eternity because they still do not have being. Only those who have being can live in eternity. The being is the intimate, the spirit. It is necessary to work first with molecular material to make soul, and then to refine the energy of the soul to a higher grade to make spirit. It is necessary to transmute molecular material into electronic material and cause the fission of the atom to liberate the sacred fire that converts us into divine spirits. Chapter 2. The Angels of Death. Contemporary positivist philosophy is based on the existence of matter, or materialism, and energy. There have been many arguments about force and matter, but these latter continue in spite of all speculations, X, Y unknown. The revolutionary followers of positivist philosophy are always trying to define one through the other. It is ridiculous, extremely ridiculous, to define the unknown through the unknown. Materialist philosophy said, matter is that through which changes, called movements, are effected, and movements are those changes which are effected in matter. This is the identity of the unknown. X equals Y, Y equals X. In total, ignorance, a vicious, absurd cycle. In fact, no one has seen either matter or energy. Human beings only perceive phenomena, things, forms, images, etc. We have never seen the substance of things. The given substance is not solely matter, but wood, copper, tin, stone, etc. Nor have we seen energy separated from movement. We have never seen matter separated from forms and objects. A handful of earth has a defined form. A statue has a defined form. The planet Earth has a defined form, etc. In fact, so-called matter is only a concept, as abstract as beauty, goodness, value, work, etc. No one is able to see the substance itself of things. No one knows the thing itself. We see the physical image of man, but we do not see the thing itself, the body of the man. Only by developing the spatial sense can we see the body itself, the thing itself. Space is the vehicle of the mind, and only with the sense of space can we know the thing itself, which is a man's vital body. What would be the thing itself or a plant? Its vital body. What would be the thing itself of an animal? The animal's vital body. What would be the thing itself of the earth? The vital earth. The vital earth represents the earth in itself. The life of organisms depend on this vital earth. The vital earth is found in the fourth dimension. A point in movement leaves a trace. This is a line. Line in movement leaves a trace. This is the surface. A surface in movement is converted into a solid, and a solid movement is converted into hypersolid. In fact, the hypersolid is the thing itself. The hypersolid belongs to the fourth dimension. We can only see hypersolids with the spatial sense. In fact, the temporal sense is only the surface of the spatial sense. Upon leaving itself, the point is converted into a line. When the line leaves itself, it is converted into a solid. The solid, leaving itself with a movement in space, is converted into a hypersolid. Hypersolids are contained within solid bodies. If the vital body moves to the outside of an organism, the organism inevitably disintegrates. The vital body belongs to the fourth dimension of the human essence, to the fifth dimension. The angels who govern the process of conception normally live in the fourth dimension, and those who govern death in the fifth dimension. The first connect the ego to the zoosperm. The second break the connection that exists between the ego and the physical body. The angels of death are in themselves perfect men. The loss of a loved one is very bitter, and it might seem that the angels of death are too cruel, but in fact they are not, even though this may seem incredible. The angels of death work according to laws, with supreme wisdom and great love and charity. We can only understand this clearly when we identify ourselves with them in the molecular world and in the electronic world. The angels of life give a human being a vital body so that he may live. The angels of death take life from a human being. They do this by cutting the silver cord. This cord corresponds to the umbilical cord and is sevenfold in its inner constitution. The angels of life connect the molecular body of this disincarnated person with the zoosperm so that it acquires a new body. In fact, the silver cord is a thread of life, which the angels of death break on an appropriate day and at the right time, in accordance with the law of destiny. This marvelous thread belongs to the superior dimensions of space, and can only be seen with the spatial sense. The dying often see the angel of death as a quite horrible skeletal figure. In fact, what happens is that he dresses in the clothes that suit his job. In practical life, the policeman wears his uniform, the doctor his white coat, the judge his gown, the priest his habit, etc. The funeral clothes and the skeletal figure of the angels of death horrify those who still have not awakened consciousness. The funeral symbols of the angels of death are the sickle that cuts down life, the skull of death, the long-eared owl, etc. Outside their work, the appearance of the angel of death is that of a beautiful children, sublime maidens, venerable masters, etc. The angels of death are graded in the form of hierarchies. They are grades and levels among them. The angels of death have their temples in the molecular world. They also have their grades in their palaces and libraries. There, in the immensity of the great ocean of life, there exists a funeral palace where one of the imperial genies of death has its dwelling place. Its face is that of an ineffable maiden, and its body like that of a man. This marvelous being is totally androgynous. This marvelous being is a divine hermaphrodite. Thousands of angels of death work under its direction. In its library there are thousands of molecular volumes where the karmic names and dates of all those who must die are written. Each with its own day and time according to the law of destiny. The science of death is terribly divine. The intellectual animal falsely named man dies unconsciously and is born unconsciously, and goes blindly from the cradle to the grave without knowing where he comes from or where he is going. In making soul, we awaken consciousness, and only then become aware of the mysteries of life and death. Any man with soul can negotiate with the angels of death and disincarnate himself at will in accordance with his needs. This means having the power to lengthen his life if he considers it necessary in order to realize or complete some task in the physical world. Those who have transfigured themselves in the electronic world, those who have an electronic body, because they have made soul, can command the angel of death and keep their physical body for millions of years. These are the great saviors of humanity, the great rectors of the world. Let us remember the king of the world cited by Ozendowski in his book entitled Beasts, Men, and God. This great being lives in Agartha and has a body of indecipherable age. Extremely old religious writing mention this great being. Let us remember Sanat Kumara, the Ancient of Days, the great Emoliate, the founder of the College of Initiates of the Great White Lodge. This adept lives in the Gobi Desert in an isolated oasis. The body of this great being is more than 18 million years old. With him in the same oasis live a group of adepts with immortal Lemurian bodies. All these adepts travel through the superior dimensions of space with their physical bodies. They have the power to teletransport themselves with their physical bodies through the fourth or fifth dimension. They all exercise power over the angels of death. They are the adepts of the mysteries of life and death. They have all had to work with the great arcanus. Chapter 3. The Tribunals of Karma. The Tibetan Book of the Dead said, "You have been unconscious for the last 3.5 days. As soon as you recover, you will have consciousness." What happened? Well, at this moment all samsara, the universal phenomena, is in revolution. Admission to the electronic and molecular worlds at the moment of death is a tremendous test for man's consciousness. The Tibetan Book of the Dead states that at the moment of death all men fall into a faint that lasts 3.5 days. Max Heindel, Rudolf Steiner, and many other authors sustain that in these 3.5 days the disincarnate ego sees its whole life pass in the form of images in retrospective order. The said authors state that these memories are contained in the vital body. This is true, but it is only part of the truth. The images and memories contained in the vital body and its retrospective vision is only an automatic repetition of something similar in the electronic world. At the moment of death and during the 3.5 days during and following death, our consciousness and inner judgment are liberated by electronic discharge. We then see our whole life pass in a retrospective form. The discharge is so strong that it makes a person fall into a state of coma and incoherent dreams. Only those who possess what is called soul can resist the electronic discharge without losing consciousness. When the 3.5 days have passed, the essence centers a state of lunar-type consciousness. At the moment of death, we relive our life in a retrospective form, under electronic discharge, but in a very rapid and terrible way. In the molecular world, we again relive the life that has just passed, but in a much slower form because time in the molecular world is slower than in the electronic world. Under lunar influence, we relive our life from old age to childhood to birth. Then the disincarnate visit all these places in which they related. They relive each scene of their life, saying and doing the same as they did in life, feeling joy for the good works and profound moral pain for the bad. It is clear that when the retrospective work is finished, we have full awareness of the final result of the life that has just passed. It is then and only then that all those who are not definitely lost make the decision to correct their errors and pay their debts. Only those who are completely lost do not respond to the terrible impact of the molecular and electronic worlds. In fact, those being already so materialized that they return to the mineral world. This is the Christian hell. Ammit, the Egyptian monster, devourer of the dead, with its gigantic crocodile jaws, the devourer of hearts, the cosmic vultures that consume the waste and leftovers of humanity, the Roman Avernus, the Hindustani Avicii, etc. All the planes of existence mentioned by theosophy may be perfectly synthesized in 4 regions: hell, earth, paradise, and heaven, that is to say mineral world, cellular world, molecular world, and electronic world. The final judgment is what decides the fate of the discarnate. When the retrospective work is finished, we have to present ourselves before the tribunals of karma. In these tribunals we have to answer changes. The ruling of the judges is definite. It is incorrect to say that all beings pass to the regions of paradise, or to celestial-type states of happiness after judgment. In fact, only a very small minority of beings pass to the ineffable regions mentioned by theosophy. The final judgment divides the disincarnate into 3 groups. First, those who return immediately. Second, those who rise to paradisical and celestial states and return much later. And third, those who enter the mineral kingdom, or hell. Chapter 4. The 4 Circles. Our solar system is a complete body with 4 complete circles. The circumference of each of these circles has its respective time pattern. The circle of the mineral region, called hell, or Avicii, etc., has a time scale that goes from 80 million to 80 years, a terribly slow time, very appropriate for all the mineral processes which take place within the earthly crust in that kingdom called hell, or Avicii. The circle of cellular life extends from 60 years to a month, and within this time all organisms that live on the surface of the earth normally develop. The circle of molecular life extends from 1 month to 40 minutes, and measures all phenomena happening of the molecular world. The molecular world is a region or regions of the atmosphere, the paradise of all religions. The circle of electronic life oscillates between 40 to 2.5 seconds. This is the time of the celestial regions with which the phenomena of light and solar happenings are measured. Avicii. The infernal region of Avicii is within the mineral crust of the earth. Avicii is below the limits of external sensory perception. Avicii belongs to the densest mineral regions. Avicii could never be discovered with the physical senses because it belongs to the ultra. Avicii has 7 terribly dense regions. Avicii is symbolized by the inferno of the great religions. Inferno derives from infernus, lower region, the atomic infernos of nature. These are the submerged worlds within the earth's interior. When a human being has become too materialistic, too lazy, then after judgment he enters Avicii. The Tibetan Book of the Dead said, "On falling there, you will have to suffer unbearably, where there is certainly no time to escape." Those who become more and more evil end up entering the kingdom with which they have more affinity. This is the kingdom of rocks, where the petrified fossils remains of those who once living creatures abide. These are the people with hearts of stone, hearts of flint, etc. These people no longer respond to any kind of punishment, and each time that they return, all they do is work in evil and for evil. They love evil for evil's sake. Because of their persistence in crime, because of their exaggerated materialism, they have become in some way mineral. This is the melting pot, the aim of which is to liberate a fraction of the causal particle. The prime material, the psychic product, a type of embryo soul shut up in the diabolical mineralized host. In Avicii, those who are lost are involuted in time. From the human state they evolve to the animal state, then they return to the plant kingdom, and lastly to the mineral. Afterwards they disintegrate, are reduced to cosmic dust. When these shadowy entities disintegrate, something escapes inward and upward. What escapes is the embryo of the soul, the prime material that returns to the world of the spirit. Let us remember the vision of Weor, who said, "And he said, as they arrived, all returned joyfully to the meadows, and camped there, as if in a congregation. And they talked among themselves, some moaning and crying, when they remembered the terrible things that they had suffered and seen on their journey under the earth. They said their journey had been 1,000 years, because depending on the errors each man had committed, and the number of people he had harmed, he suffered successively 10 times for each one. Every 100 years they paid, because 100 years counts as the life of a man, and so it was that evil works were paid for 10 times over." The cellular region. The return of the human essence begins with conception. The trio that starts our life, conception, gestation, birth, is marvelous. It is amazing to think that man begins as a cell, subject to the rapid time of cells and living in a world of cells. It is extraordinary to know that after about 80 years his human life ends overcharged with memories. The inner process that began conception are extremely rapid, but as time passes, become slower. All organic processes become slower. In fact, the relativity of time does exist. Human gestation lasts 10 lunar months, infancy 100 lunar months, and life more than less 1,000 lunar months. The electromagnetic trace that the life of a man leaves in the instant of death is imprinted firmly on the conception of the fetus. The path of life is formed with the hoof marks of the horse of death. Death, judgment, and conception makes a perfect trio. At the moment of death, says a book called Tibetan Doctrine, the 4 sounds called, sounds that inspire sacred terror, are heard. That of the vital force of the elemental earth, a sound like the collapse of a mountain. That of the vital force of the element water, a noise that of ocean waves. That of the vital force of the element fire, a sound like that of a forest fire. That of a vital force of the elemental air, and a sound like that of 1,000 thunderclaps echoing simultaneously. The place in which one seeks shelter, fleeing from these noises, is the womb. When the zoosperm unites with the ovum, gestation begins. The cell with which human life begins has 48 chromosomes. This clearly speaks of the 48 laws that govern the human organism. There are 48 controls that regulate the human organism. The chromosomes are divided into genes. 100 or so make a chromosome. The total constitution of the human organism is determined by the genes. Genes are very difficult to study because they are made up of a few molecules. They vibrate rapidly and constitute an intermediary zone between the molecular world and the cellular world. The genes move and combine under the radioactive waves emitted by a dying person in his last moments. So the new physical body is the exact result of our past return, the faithful instrument of our karma. The life of every human being in the physical world is a repetition of the past life, plus its good and bad consequence. Time is round and events are repeated at the correct time of day. This is a law of recurrence. Everything happens again as it happened before, but with its consequence, good as well as bad. This is the law of karma, the law of action and consequence. In fact, the object of automatic repetition of events is to make us aware of our own errors. That is a law. Unfortunately, we can do nothing. Everything is repeated at the correct time, just as the hands of a clock go round. To change external circumstances, we have to change internally by forming soul and spirit, that is to say, processing being. Only the being can create. Only the being can change all things. Whoever wants to possess being has to transmute his sexual, emotional, mental, passionate, motor, sentimental, etc. energies. We have to transmute the base metals, that is to say, our defects, into the purest gold of the spirit. Only in this way will we possess soul and spirit. The pluralized ego has to die. It is urgent that the being be born within us. Life in the cellular world is a tremendous repetition of events, and we can only liberate ourselves from this tragic wheel of fate by dissolving the ego on the basis of supreme understanding and sanctity, and by forming soul and spirit. It is a horrible vicious circle, the wheel of samsara. The molecular region. The legend of Zoroaster said, "All those whose good works outweigh their sins go to heaven. Those whose sins are greater go to hell. He who has the two equal remains in Hamaskan until the future body or resurrection." The molecular region, if the region of paradise, these beings who suffered greatly in life and who are relatively good become submerged in the happiness of the molecular world before taking a new physical body. The molecular regions are saturated in happiness. The human essences enjoy these ineffable regions in the absence of their pluralized egos. The egos of the essence remain meanwhile in the doorway of mystery, awaiting the new reincarnation. In the absence of the ego, the essence develop happily in paradise. These beings use the molecular body. Those who possess the astral Christ shine with glory and are ever happier in paradise. This happiness lies in the sexual seed, in the germinal state. But it germinates and is born. When the initiate knows the mysteries of sex, the astral Christ is a marvelous body. People who possess this body are truly immortal, since they never lose their consciousness. As paradise is molecular, it enters and penetrates all Earth's atmosphere, and is especially related to the ionosphere, which is found 60 miles above the Earth's surface. This region is especially pure. Even when the astronauts travel through this area, they can never discover paradise with their physical senses. We can only see paradise with the spatial sense. The Gnostic movement teaches various scientific techniques for opening the spatial sense. The molecular region has various ineffable countries. They are the planes and subplanes that Theosophers and Rosicrucians speak of. In these regions of limitless happiness, the disincarnate live happily until their time runs out. Dawn, day, evening, and night, infancy, adolescence, maturity, and old age govern the whole cosmos, and even the discarnate are subject to this law. In time, these fortunate beings have to return to the physical world. Everything that the disincarnate see is in their minds. The Devakarnic states speak of the Theosophic and Rosicrucian books affirm this. The state of unconsciousness into which the disincarnate fall under electronic shock is very regrettable, because even when they enjoy the happiness of the molecular regions, they are not sufficiently conscious, as an adept of the White Lodge would be. Only those who have acquired soul live conscious of the superior regions of the universe. The ordinary discarnate project their own desires and aspirations into the molecular atmosphere and dream of them, living in perfect happiness. Adepts do not dream because they have awakened consciousness and live in this region dedicated to work in accordance with the great cosmic laws in the laboratory of nature. This does not mean that the discarnate do not enjoy the scenery of paradise. Naturally, they are infinitely happy in their surrounding of happiness. The Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Art of Dying from the Middle Ages teach preparation for death. Men dedicated solely to material things will not have the good fortune of experiencing the happiness of the electronic world due to the state of unconsciousness into which they fall. When these people live in the molecular world, they spend their holidays dreaming. They drink from the fountain of forgetfulness and dream delightfully. The molecular body is a microscope and a telescope at the same time. With this body, we can see the infinitely small and the infinitely large. In paradise, the discarnate participate in the intimate nature of everything created, penetrating the heart of all that exists. It is better to know things by penetration than by external perception. Life in paradise would be better if the disincarnate did not project his own desires into the molecular world. There each projects images of his own mind into the atmosphere. The electronic world. The electronic world is the solar world of light, the world of the spirit. Those who have spirit, those who possess an electronic body, exercise power over the molecular, cellular, and mineral worlds. Those who possess an electronic body are in position to help their disciples to create their own souls. Any true instructor teaches his disciples to create soul. Any man with soul is a true reformer. A man with soul can help his disciples, teaching them the theory of acquisition of their soul. But only a man who has an electronic body can work with the embryo souls in the same way that a man with a cellular body can work with an earth mineral. Certain affirmations saying that human beings have soul and spirit have been exaggerated. In fact, within the human essence, there exists a fraction of the causal being. But this fraction is only the prime material that life has given us to make soul. Whoever makes soul fuses himself with the great universal soul. Whoever makes spirit is united with the universal spirit of life. Because unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he will have abundance, and throw the useless servant into the outer darkness. There will be wailing and the gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25, verses 29 and 30. The fate of the human essence in the electronic world after death is fleeting, because the human being is still not prepared for living continuously in the solar region. There are schools for the creation of soul, and there are also schools of sexual regeneration for the creation of spirit. The Gnostic Rosicrucian school is a temple and school at the same time. The Gnostic movement is closely united to the authentic and legitimate Rosicrucian school, which exists only in the superior worlds. Our universal Christian Gnostic movement teaches the real path of regeneration. Our school teaches the creation of soul and spirit. Our movement has the most complete esoteric school. Our movement is initiating the new Aquarian age in the august thundering of thought. The electronic world is marvelous. In the molecular world, light and sound are diffused 100 times more rapidly than in the cellular world. But in the electronic world, they travel instantaneously, not along a line like in the cellular world, nor across an area like smell, but across a volume of space, and being independent of atmosphere, they can travel to the sun in 7 minutes. In the electronic world, we are light, and we live in all things. There we experience a tremendous reality of unity of life. Electronic bodies move freely with the great light in the divine space. The human consciousness, dressed with an electronic body, includes within itself the life and consciousness of all the beings of the universe. This is yoga, the union with God. All those who acquire spirit have to live the drama of the inner Christ. In their practical lives, their homes and their towns, among their people, this is a cosmic drama that has existed since before the coming of Jesus. The essence of the drama, its principal event in the death of the initiate and his supreme surrender to the Father. This happening takes place amidst lightning, thunder, and great earthquakes. The transfiguration of the principal person to the electronic world, the acquisition of spirit, is something magnificent and terribly divine. In these instants, the electronic force is displaced, and the vertical fraction of all planes of cosmic consciousness opens the inner worlds to the ordinary perception of the man in the street for a moment. Then all the marvelous things that the Gospels tell of when Jesus died on the cross take place. The earth trembles, graves open, the saints are resuscitated, and they all cry out, "Truly, this is the Son of God." The Gnostic movement is an organization with more than 3 million members throughout the world. The Venerable Master, Samael on Weor, is the great avatar of the Aquarian Age. He is the founder-president. Samael on Weor is a master of the greater mysteries, and all that has been hidden from human beings for centuries, and as the privilege of the few initiates of humanity, all that is hidden in the sacred of the books in all religions of all time. All that remained hermetically sealed in the sacred temple of the great civilizations that have preceded us in the course of history. All is revealed by this master without any veil for the redemption of humanity. Gnostics are practical. With these teachings, you will be able to develop your occult powers to see, hear, touch, and feel the angels, archangels, seraphims, potencies, and virtues, etc. With our practices, you will even be able to reach union with God. Samael on Weor. End of chapter. End of book. This audio presentation of the Book of the Dead by Samael on Weor has been brought to you by AudioEnlightenment.com and has been recorded for the exclusive use of Audio Enlightenment members only. If you have received this audio from any website other than our own, please visit our website and let us know at your convenience.